Welcome to Unsolved Cases by Skoob, the mysterious disappearance of Jennifer Farber Dulos. I'm your host, Larry Hunter, and today we're diving deep into a case that has everything: wealth, family secrets, a bitter custody battle, and a vanishing that would lead to one of the most compelling criminal investigations in recent memory. Picture this: September 27th, 1968, New York City. Jennifer Farber is born into what many would consider privilege. Her maternal uncle and aunt? Elizabeth Claiborne and Arthur Ortenberg. Yes, the founders of Liz Claiborne Incorporated. This wasn't just any family. This was fashion royalty. But Jennifer carved her own path. She wasn't content to ride on family coattails. Jennifer pushed herself academically, graduating from Brown University in 1990. An Ivy League education that spoke to her intelligence and drive. But she wasn't done. She went on to earn a master's degree in writing from the prestigious NYU Tisch School of the Arts. This woman had ambition, talent, and the education to back it up. Jennifer channeled her writing skills into meaningful work, contributing to Patch.com and running her own blog. She was creating, sharing stories, building a voice in the digital landscape. And then, in 2004, love entered the picture. She married Fotis Dulos, a Greek-American real estate developer who seemed to share her drive for success. Together, they built what appeared to be the American dream: 5 beautiful children, a life in New Canaan, Connecticut, one of the wealthiest communities in the United States. From the outside, they had everything. But as we know, the most beautiful facades often hide the darkest secrets. The fairy tale, as fairy tales often do, began to crumble. What started as a love story would eventually become a nightmare that would tear through the quiet streets of New Canaan and leave 5 children without their mother. May 24th, 2019. A Friday morning that started like any other for Jennifer Dulos, but would end as the last day anyone would ever see her alive. Let me paint you the picture of those final, haunting hours. At exactly 8 a.m., Jennifer was doing what she did every school day, being a devoted mother. Security cameras captured her, dropping off her 5 children at the New Canaan Country School. It was routine, predictable, normal. Jennifer was someone who thrived on structure, especially for her kids. This wasn't just any drop-off. This was the last time those children would see their mother. After leaving the school, Jennifer drove her 2017 black Chevrolet Suburban back to her rented house on Wells Lane, a quiet, tree-lined street that epitomized suburban safety. She arrived home sometime between 8:05 and 8:30 a.m. What happened next would become the subject of intense investigation and courtroom drama. But here's what makes Jennifer's disappearance so chilling. She had plans. Real, concrete commitments. 2 appointments in New York City that day. The first at 11 a.m., the second at 1 p.m. Jennifer was, according to everyone who knew her, religiously punctual. Her friend and spokesperson, Carrie Luft, would later say something that sends chills down your spine. Jennifer was someone who was always punctual, always reliable. The moment she didn't show up where she was supposed to be, we knew something was off. As the morning turned to afternoon, phones started ringing. Friends were calling, texting. Her nanny was trying to reach her. The appointments came and went, empty chairs where Jennifer should have been sitting. Her phone, usually buzzing with the constant communication of a busy mother coordinating 5 children's lives, fell silent. Remember, this wasn't just any time in Jennifer's life. She was in the middle of a bitter, high-conflict custody battle with her estranged husband, Fotis. She had structured her entire existence around creating stability for her children during this turbulent time. Disappearing wasn't just out of character. It was impossible. As evening approached, the concern turned to alarm, and alarm turned to panic. At 7 p.m., after more than 9 hours of complete silence, 2 friends, including Jennifer's live-in nanny, walked into the New Canaan Police Department with a missing person report. that would launch one of Connecticut's most intensive criminal investigations. When New Canaan police responded to Jennifer's home that evening, they weren't just conducting a routine missing person check. What they discovered would transform this case from a disappearance into a homicide investigation. Lieutenant Aaron Latourette of the New Canaan Police Department was among the first to examine Jennifer's garage, and what he saw would haunt the investigation. In his own words, "I noticed what appeared to be red blood in the front of that vehicle, a red mark in the grill part of the vehicle." The vehicle he was referring to was Jennifer's black Suburban, sitting in her own garage like a silent witness to violence. But that wasn't all. Investigators observed what they described as a pinkish-reddish area on the floor of the garage, and what appeared to be footsteps or footprints in reddish coloring. It was a scene that told a story no one wanted to read. A state trooper would later testify with chilling matter-of-factness. There was evidence that someone had attempted to clean up blood. Think about that for a moment. Someone had tried to erase the evidence of what happened to Jennifer, but you can't completely hide violence of this magnitude. Sergeant Kenneth Ventresca of the Connecticut State Police Major Crime Squad didn't mince words when he described what investigators concluded. A serious, violent assault occurred in that garage. This wasn't a missing person case anymore. This was the scene of a brutal attack on a mother of 5 in her own home. The evidence painted a horrific picture. Jennifer had returned home from that school drop-off, pulled into her garage, a place that should have been safe, mundane, ordinary, and encountered violence so severe that it left blood spatter and clear signs of an attempt to clean up the aftermath. What happened to Jennifer Dulos in those morning hours would remain a mystery, but the garage told investigators everything they needed to know about the outcome. A woman who had simply been trying to live her life and protect her children had met with something terrible in the most ordinary of places. While investigators were processing the blood evidence at Jennifer's home, a parallel story was unfolding 17 miles away in Hartford, Connecticut. This is where the case takes a turn that reads like a crime thriller, except it's all devastatingly real. Surveillance cameras throughout Hartford captured something extraordinary on the evening of May 24th, the same day Jennifer disappeared. The footage shows a vehicle belonging to Fotis Dulos, accompanied by his girlfriend Michelle Triconis, making multiple stops along Albany Avenue. But this wasn't a casual drive through the city. The video is methodical, deliberate, chilling. Clip after clip shows Fotis stepping out of the vehicle, disposing of large black garbage bags into public trash receptacles. In the passenger seat, clearly visible, is a woman matching Michelle Triconis' description. They weren't just throwing away ordinary trash. Prosecutors would later allege that the couple disposed of approximately 30 bags along this stretch of road. But here's where it gets even more sinister. When investigators recovered these bags, they found items that told a story of violence and attempted cover-up. Among the evidence, a Vineyard Vines shirt, cut down the middle and soaked with what investigators described as a blood-like substance, a white bra, 2 plastic ponchos, a white towel with reddish stains, a mop handle with red specks twisted into the shape of an N, a broken razor blade, gloves and sponges, all coated in blood-like substance. One piece of surveillance footage shows something particularly haunting. A man in a red shirt rummaging through a trash can where Fotis had just disposed of items, then putting the item back and walking away. Even a stranger could sense something wasn't right about what had been thrown away. Perhaps most damning of all, one envelope found in a storm drain contained altered Connecticut license plates that prosecutors connected directly to Dulos. This wasn't random disposal. This was a calculated attempt to hide evidence of a crime. The surveillance footage captured what prosecutors argued was a disposal route designed to spread evidence across multiple locations, making it harder to recover and piece together. But technology and thorough police work meant that this trail of evidence became a roadmap directly back to Jennifer's attackers. 8 days after Jennifer vanished, the investigation took its first major turn. On June 1st, 2019, Fotis Dulos and Michelle Troconis were arrested in Avon, Connecticut. But interestingly, they weren't charged with murder. Not yet. The initial charges were tampering with or fabricating physical evidence and first-degree hindering prosecution. Both were released on $500,000 bail with electronic monitoring. And crucially, they were ordered not to have contact with each other. At this point, Troconis maintained her innocence, stating simply, "I didn't do it." But this was just the beginning. As months passed and investigators continued to build their case, the charges became more serious, the net wider. On January 7th, 2020, more than 7 months after Jennifer's disappearance, Connecticut State Police made arrests that would dominate headlines. Fotis Dulos was arrested at his Farmington home and charged with capital murder, and kidnapping. These weren't just serious charges. Capital murder meant he could potentially face the death penalty. At the same time, both Troconis and Kent Mawhinney, a lawyer and longtime friend of Dulos, were charged with conspiracy to commit murder. The state's case was becoming clearer. According to court filings, prosecutors alleged that Dulos killed his estranged wife at her home between roughly 8:05 a.m. and 10:25 a.m. on May 24th, then worked with Troconis to destroy and conceal evidence. The meticulous disposal route through Hartford, the blood evidence in the garage, the altered license plates. It all formed a prosecution theory of premeditated murder and coordinated cover-up. Jennifer's family, while relieved that charges had finally been filed, issued a statement that captured their pain. Although we are relieved that the wait for these charges is over, for us, there is no sense of closure. Nothing can bring Jennifer back. We miss her every day and will forever mourn her loss. The legal machinery was now in motion, building toward trials that would determine whether justice could be served for Jennifer Dulos. But the case would take another shocking turn that no one could have predicted. January 28, 2020. Fotis Dulos was scheduled to appear for a bond hearing at the Stamford courthouse. He was out on $6 million bail, under house arrest, facing charges that could result in life in prison or even the death penalty. But when court officers called his case that morning, the defendant's chair remained empty. Concerned about the no-show, Farmington police officers were dispatched to conduct a welfare check at Dulos's residence. What they found was a scene that would end the criminal case against him in the most dramatic way possible. Officers discovered Fotis Dulos sitting in his running SUV in the garage, with obvious signs of medical distress. A hose had been attached to the exhaust pipe. He had attempted suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning. Officers immediately began CPR, working for more than 10 minutes to try to save him. His attorney, Norm Pattis, would later reveal that Dulos had left behind a handwritten note that began with these words, "If you are reading this, I am no more. I refuse to spend even an hour more in jail for something I had nothing to do with." The note reportedly proclaimed his innocence and that of his co-defendants. Dulos was rushed to Yukon Health, then airlifted to Jacobi Medical Center in the Bronx, where he underwent hyperbaric oxygen treatment. But the damage was too severe. On January 30th, 2020, at 5:32 p.m., Fotis Dulos was declared dead. His death created a legal earthquake. On March 3, 2020, a Connecticut Superior Court judge granted the prosecution's request to dismiss the murder case against Dulos. You cannot prosecute a dead man, but his death also meant that he would never face trial, never be forced to answer for the evidence against him. His defense attorneys argued that his suicide should not be viewed as a consciousness of guilt, and even attempted to substitute his estate as a defendant to continue fighting to clear his name. But for Jennifer's family and the public following this case, Fotis Dulos had taken his secrets. and potentially the location of Jennifer's remains, to his grave. By 2023, more than 4 years had passed since Jennifer Dulos vanished. Her 5 children were growing up without their mother, cared for by their grandmother, Gloria Farber. The family faced not just emotional trauma, but legal complexities that required resolution. In August 2023, Gloria Farber filed a petition with the Darien, New Canaan Probate Court to have Jennifer declared legally dead. This wasn't just about closure, it was about protecting Jennifer's children's inheritance rights and providing legal certainty for the family's future. On October 24, 2023, Judge William P. Osterndorf made it official. More than 4 years had passed since Jennifer's disappearance. Her body had never been located, and no one, not family, friends, or her children, had heard from her. As the judge noted, the inescapable conclusion is, Jennifer is deceased. This legal declaration allowed for the distribution of Jennifer's estate according to her will, signed on April 26, 2017. Notably, that will left everything to her 5 children, explicitly excluding her estranged husband. Even in 2017, Jennifer had the foresight to protect her children's future, but the legal proceedings weren't over. In January 2024, the trial of Michelle Troconis began in the Judicial District of Stamford. She faced charges of conspiracy to commit murder, tampering with evidence, and hindering prosecution. This trial would be the public's first comprehensive look at the evidence against Jennifer's alleged conspirators. For weeks, prosecutors laid out their case: the blood evidence from the garage, the surveillance footage from Hartford, the items recovered from trash bags, including clothing with Jennifer's DNA, the altered license plates, the attempted cleanup, the coordinated alibis. It painted a picture of a woman who helped plan and cover up murder. On March 1, 2024, the jury reached their verdict: guilty on all counts. As the verdict was read, Troconis sat with her head bowed, visibly emotional. She would be sentenced to 20 years in prison, with 14.5 years to be served before eligibility for other terms, followed by 5 years of probation. Jennifer's family issued a statement that perfectly captured the complexity of their emotions. Today's verdict is a crucial attribution of accountability, not a victory. There can be no victory when 5 children are growing up without their mother. Even after all the trials and investigations, Jennifer Dulos's body has never been found. Her 5 children still live without answers, growing up with the pain of not knowing where their mother rests. The case, once splashed across headlines for its drama and privilege, hides a darker truth: a mother's disappearance born out of domestic violence. But what really happened that day? What evidence still lies buried, waiting to be found? Listen to the full story. Every twist, every secret, every search for truth. Only on Skoob. Download the Skoob app now to uncover what the news never told you and explore the complete case of Jennifer Dulos. Because some stories don't end when the cameras stop rolling. They just go deeper.